Next speaker is Facundo Agustín Briz Rojas. He's a PhD student who completed the Bachelor of Arts degree in English Studies at the University of Oviedo in 2023, and his master's degree in comparative literature and literary studies at the University of the Basque Country. He is currently pursuing a PhD on posthumanist and ecocritical approaches to nature in fantasy, science fiction, and new weird literature, especially in the work of Jeff Vandermeer. And he has come to present us at the non-human Crossroads, Animal Agency in Jeff Vandermeer's The Southern Reach and Borne Series. So whenever you want, the floor is yours.
Just a sec. Well, thank you everybody for being here. It is a pleasure being able to present my talk, which Adrian has just said its name. Well, I'd like to start with a very brief disclaimer, and this disclaimer is that even though my title says Animal Agency, my presentation actually revolves a lot around how animal agency and animals are not one fixed thing or fixed entity, but how they intertwine with all human and other non-human living beings, such as fungi, plants, and so on and so forth, and which we will be seeing a lot of examples in the in the later analysis of the works I'm going to provide. Now, before we start, I'd like to present to you what is like the backbone of the presentation. And firstly, I'd like to introduce the two main concepts, posthuman concepts that I'm going to use for this analysis. The first one is Rosi Braidotti's Zoe-egalitarianism, and the second one is Serenella Jovino's and Serpil Oppermann's material ecocriticism. We will see how these two theoretical backgrounds, let's say, converge in some of their aspects, but also how they differ in some of them, especially in their perception of anthropomorphism, both in real life and specifically in cultural texts such as literature, audiovisual products, and everything. Now, I will present to you with a very brief literary analysis of Annihilation, the first installment of the Southern Reach series, and Borne, the first installment of the Borne series. Both of them written by the Florida man, that is Jeff Vandermeer. So, well, starting with Zoe-egalitarianism. Zoe-egalitarianism is a way of thinking that Rosi Braidotti developed mainly in her book, The Posthuman, in 2023. And she describes it as a mode of thinking that, quote, encourages us to engage in equitable relationships with animals. In my view, so her view, the challenge today is how to deterritorialize or nomadize the human-animal interaction so as to bypass the dialectics of otherness. This also entails secularizing, accordingly, the concept of the human nature and the life which animates it. Now, after explaining this, we have to take into account that this concept is mainly a monistic term that refers to the non-human vital force of life, as she describes it in The Posthuman. Its main goal actually is not to departure from humanist values of equality, but to find that equality inside the difference of human and non-human beings of the planet, let's say, of our own environment. It is also a system of representation that matches the complexity of contemporary non-human animals and their proximity to humans. So the idea of contacts is always there. And more importantly, Braidotti's Zoe-egalitarianism represents a relative affirmative statement. It represents the affirmative statement that posthumanism's paradigm shift is always looking for, as a sense of multiple becomings and true interspecies coexistence in the midst of the 6 massive extinction we are currently living in. Okay? In order to make it a correct mode of human and non-human relationship representation. So egalitarianism regards imagination as with high standards. Now, these are the main works with which you can find these theories. And now, moving on to material ecocriticism, we can see that it is defined by Serenella Jovino and Serpil Oppermann in this paper that you can see over there as a means to acknowledge the agentic power of the human and the non-human entities in the natural environment. On the one hand, we can see that it was origined in the material turn in the early 21st century in response to the linguistic turn. On the other hand, it was also heavily influenced by what Serenella Jovino and Serpil Oppermann define as ecological postmodernism, which recognized, quote, the vitality of things in all natural, cultural processes and the coextensivity of language and reality. It is also relevant to take into we should also take into account that material ecocriticism takes the advantage of its predecessors, such as new materialisms, and it really shows specifically in its display of the interdisciplinarity, with a set of applications that ranges from social science studies, feminism, anthropology, geography, environmental philosophies, and animal studies. Okay. Now, more importantly, material ecocriticism reflects on how ecocriticism as a critical theory influences agency, text, narrativity, discursivity, and intentionality. If all matter has agency, all matter projects a specific sense of bodily existence. Now, this last concept highlights the relevance of bodily natures and how the body is referred to as an integument of collective natures in which the human and the non-human coexist. That's why I said I introduced my disclaimer at the beginning of the presentation. We are not talking about animal agency, just talking about animals, but also about how they coexist and how they intermingle with the human as well, the human and the machine. Nowadays. So here I'll provide you with many of material ecocriticism's predecessors and inspirations, which is always useful. And well, now, as stated before, so egalitarianism encompasses both the human and the non-human in a web of interconnected existence based on the materiality of the bodies. Bodies are really important. Yet, according to Braidotti, anthropomorphizing animals leads to what she defines a non-humanism that has been strongly challenged by radical ecofeminists by saying that anthropomorphism is a mere extension of human privilege to something that is not human, therefore establishing a hierarchical relationship between the human and the non-human by extending your own entitled privileges. Now, it also identifies this narrative technique as, quote, it also says that anthropomorphism denies the, quote, specificity of animals altogether because it uniformly takes them as emblems of the transspecies universal value of empathy, which we know is human construct. Now, on the other hand, contrastingly, material ecocriticism validates this narrative technique by stating that, quote, in the context of material ecocriticism, the humanization of things, places, and natural elements, non-human animals, is not necessarily the sign of an anthropocentric and hierarchical vision, but can be a narrative expedient intended to stress the agentic power of matter and the horizontality of its elements. If conceived in this critical perspective, anthropomorphizing representations can reveal similarities and symmetries between the human and the non-human. Okay? This idea stems from the material ecocriticism principle of agentic matter, which was previously mentioned. This idea challenges the traditional concept of textuality. Therefore, matter becomes a text in which the human and the non-human agency again are intertwined. Such interpretations allows for the deconstruction of the nature-culture divide that provoke the contemporary issues such as the climate change. It is also important to state that anthropomorphism links material ecocriticism with specifically with Stacy Alaimo's previously mentioned transcorporeality. Jovino and Oppermann explain this concept as a figuration that quote, complements the conventional ecological vision, according to which everything is connected to everything else. Again, the idea of connection between the non-human and the human is very important. This similar idea is also mentioned in Donna Haraway's renowned Cyborg Manifesto and Companion Species Manifesto, which is the nature of cultures. And both the nature of cultures and the transcorporeality agree on the queerness of this connection between the human and the non-human. Now, I'm going to provide you with some of the setting of these stories. You can see that, weird fiction is very close to cosmic horror, but what is interesting about Vandermeer's work is that if the traditional cosmic horror, such as Lovecraft's, revolves around humanistic values and how they are distorted and how they are perceived, this distortion is perceived negatively by the audience. Jeff Vandermeer presents this in a way that it is not actually something negative, and in fact, it may be something even hopeful in the world we're living in right now. So, this brief analysis intends to focus on some of the narrative themes, techniques, or elements of these works. The first aspect I'm going to talk about is the thing that both of these novels have in common, which is the first-person narrator. And in Annihilation's case, the nameless biologist. The biologist doesn't provide with her name throughout the whole novel. She is absolutely detached from her identity when she enters Area X. Area X is a liminal space in somewhere in Florida that has been changed by some alien entity that reflects everything that is our real world in reverse, so that everything that enters it is changed for the better of the natural environment to its extreme. Okay, the idea that Vandermeer takes these ideas to the extreme is very important to see how pragmatic these theories can be shown in this text. Now, the first quotation we have here is this one, and this relates to one of the biologist's first experiences in Area X. And this experience, this quotation specifically, challenges rational objectivity. It was a feeling I often had when out in the wilderness. I had to fight against the sensation because it could overwhelm my scientific objectivity. So objectivity and rationality, as understood as anthropocentric concepts, and humanist concepts, are challenged and problematized from the get-go. Okay? Now, regarding Borne, the setting is a little bit different. In this case, it's not set in the contemporary times. It is set in a post-apocalyptic city ruined by climate change, and there is a strong presence of biotechnology. And so the idea of cyborgs, humans, animals melted with technology is very present throughout the whole novel. And here we also have something which I think is in tune with the prior presentation. In both novels, we have two companies that are attempting to control everything, and in a sense of liberation, fail to do it. Now, again, comparing the first first-person narrators, we have that in this novel, the first-person narrator is Rachel, a scavenger in the city. Okay, it's as simple as that. Now, the story of Borne talks about how Rachel, while scavenging for salvage, finds a weird animal-like squid anemone, and starts to grow it and feeding it information and until the creature gains life itself. However, she is not free of the anthropocentric bias that we would assign our pets, actually. She tries to educate Borne in how to be how to be a human, how to be good, how to be respectful, how to not kill, when actually it is absolutely against its nature, and it's also not his fault. All right, so in these specific quotations, we see how throughout the relationship, Borne challenges her own perspective of reality as well. Now, one of the most important aspects of these first person narrators is that throughout these stories, relevance is given more to the five senses rather than rationality and humanistic thought. And we can see it everywhere throughout the novels. Look at the vocabulary. I saw in the gloom. I could smell the sea. The wind was something like, was like something alive. It entered every part of my body. My senses seemed too acute, too sharp. Sorry, I'll go back to that again. And the same, and we also find the same enhancement of the senses when Rachel's first encounter with Borne is narrated. Look at the vocabulary again. A hybrid of anemone and squid. Sleek colors, deep blues and greens. Its skin, its skin is described as warm and pulsating. The texture, smooth and water-worn stone. You see, it's very in the face how it is. How sometimes the five senses are given more relevance to what we can understand with our own brains. The other thing we can find in this, by exploring this kind of focalization, is that the personal experiences these characters undergo help them deconstruct their own anthropocentric assumptions. Okay, this second quotation is not about Area X. It's about one of the biologists' escapes to the coast to watch fish and starfish. This quotation is not about any alien sort of creature. It's about a starfish, and you can see how the starfish, even though it has a place in the taxonomy catalog studied and described, challenges her own idea of what biology means just by existing. Okay? And well, regarding non-human animals, we also find that there is Area X induces transformation in everything human and non-human that enters it, and therefore we can conclude that Borne does it as well. I'll let you have a brief look at the quotations before going to the conclusions. They are their own. This quotation is about the machine-animal hybrids I was talking about before. Okay, and well, throughout this brief analysis, and I'm really sorry I'm running late, we can conclude that both Annihilation and Borne appeal to Braidotti's Zoe-egalitarianism. Both of them display some traces of anthropomorphism. However, they bypass, as we saw, the idea of extending one's privileges to non-human animals and the natural environment in general. Both portray non-human narrative agency as material ecocriticism dictated based on their otherness. And both present human narrators that undergo deconstruction similar to the posthuman ecocriticism values try to achieve. Now, these are the words that you may be interested in or not, and that's it. Thank you very much.